The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Rui Aguiar. Rui is the co-founder and CTO at Expedock. Rui, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're delighted to have you. Rui, let's start with yourself, please. Could you give us a bit of a background and an overview of your journey in technology, from where you got started, some of the roles you've held along the way? Take us up to today as the CTO and co-founder at Expedock.
Sure, absolutely. So I got started probably as many young people do, building video games with my friends. I must have been like 11 or 12 years old, hanging out after school, coding things together. I went to Stanford for my undergrad. I worked at a few larger tech companies when I was there, Facebook, Stripe. Graduated early, went to join a company called Rockset, which is basically like a cloud database. I wrote a lot of their kind of systems and back-endy type stuff. And, when I was there, I realized that there was sort of a ton of kind of innovation going on in the AI plus system space. Jeff Dean had just published his Learn Index Structures paper. There's a lot of kind of hype around that. And it was very obvious that was the clear future of systems and databases and many other industries as well. So I went back to school for a bit to get my master's, worked under Andrew Ng in the Stanford Machine Learning Group, published a couple of things out of that lab, basically around deep reinforcement learning for sort of cancer pathology, tumor detection and segmentation. And when I was there, by a couple of my friends who were working on Expedock, and they were like, hey, we think there's this really big business opportunity in this space that's very underpenetrated by software. And we think sort of your technical background is a great fit for this business. So that's pretty much how I got introduced to it.
Amazing. I love it. So you touched on the early introductions to your partners and co-founders at Expedock. So tell us all about Expedock, who you are, what you do, mission of the business, and then we can jump into your role as CTO and the use of AI behind the scenes.
Sure, absolutely. So basically, because this business is tackling kind of two very sort of tackling a very difficult problem in a very hard to understand industry. I usually like to start out with kind of the spiel on what the global supply chain is, and then jumping into kind of how the company solves problems in it. 95% of everything around you really is moved through the global supply chain, right? Everything from your Nike shoes to your iPhone, to the coffee that you get in the morning, to the water that you're picking up, even sometimes the tap water in certain cities is moved through basically a network of businesses that coordinate to move goods from point A to point B. The analogy I like to draw is it's basically the internet, except you have atoms instead of bits, right? So you have, instead of like a bunch of routers routing packets using IP headers or something like that between point A to point B, you basically have a series of businesses. And the kind of core businesses that tackle a lot of this stuff are called freight forwarders. And basically what a freight forwarder is, it's a third-party supply chain consultant who basically specializes in relationships with carriers, getting you the best price, a timely movement of goods from point A to point B. And the fundamental sort of premise behind Expedock and why this company was founded was basically that the way that the global supply chain is run is it's this huge, like $400 billion plus market, moving trillions of dollars of goods every single year. And it's hyper underpenetrated by software. It's really outdated. There's tons and tons of room for kind of innovation and efficiency gains at every single level. And so basically what our company does is we use artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data science to help freight forwarders and shippers run more efficiently. So that's everything from using kind of multimodal machine learning to perform document extraction over the PDFs and invoices that these guys use as the communication protocol of moving goods, to machine learning on route prediction, to analytics on kind of costing, revenue, supply chain fraud, stuff like that. And that's pretty much kind of the sort of core mission and kind of what we do day to day at the company.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Really helps to frame the business opportunity, but also raises a lot of questions around what use of AI there is. And you touched on the importance of many aspects of it there, but I'd love to get your take. As the CTO, you're obviously overseeing the entire technology organization. Can you give us a look behind the scenes, what it looks like there at Expedock? If somebody was coming in, joining today, how many people are involved? or the various positions that are required in order to help you guys get the platform working for your customers?
So I can give, I guess, probably what would be helpful is a short sort of medium and long-term overview of the vision and how that's playing into the engineering and data science teams today. So basically how we view our product and our roadmap is we have this horizontal layer of data that we're capturing, of documents, of shipments, of payments. And we've gotten to the scale of billions and billions of dollars of these that we're feeding into our system, with kind of millions every single day going into kind of our data layer, our OLTP and OLAP sort of warehouses. And basically what we do is not only do we build products to kind of automate the capturing of that data and automate kind of manual processes. For our roadmap, we really think about building kind of vertical pillars on top of that horizontal data foundation. So that's everything from like very sort of, I won't call it like low level, but relatively simplistic analytics around basically like using that data to help customers understand, are their invoices being paid on time? What are their margins for a shipment? Which sounds really simple, but again, underpenetrated by software. Most of these people have no idea kind of what their margins are for a given quarter or something like that, which is totally crazy. And basically more medium term, we're hoping to build everything there from kind of basic analytics to higher level machine learning around everything from route prediction, costing, supply chain fraud, stuff like that. Long term, basically what our vision is to build such a data moat that we're able to enter as either a vertical player or the data platform for many fintech adjacent supply chain use cases. And so what that means is like there's tons of industries in the supply chain that basically could be bolstered by the use of data. One big example being something called trade finance, which basically is like underwriting for specific containers. The way that this is done right now is it's done by big banks that use mostly Excel spreadsheets as their backends. Our kind of hypothesis there, our business sort of 10x improvement there is we can say, hey, first of all, don't be using this. We have all the data of all the customers that you want to be underwriting over all time, including like their default rate, the fraud rate in the invoices, who's paying them late, who's paying them on time. We can basically create a model for risk probabilities of default, of being paid late, of not being able to make a loan back, or we could enter the space ourselves with that kind of as a 10x better experience. So that was a little bit long-winded, but that's kind of the short, medium, and long term. In terms of what that looks like today, there's a few things that go into that from a hiring perspective. So right now, what we're really hiring for is 4 core roles. The first one being, I guess like you could call it full stack or front end or back end devs. So we need a lot of people who are really interested in working with data to be able to build products. So actually like one hiring profile that we've looked at is ex-data scientists who are also like really interested in back-end development and using data to build those vertical products. The second one being there's tons of ways to connect to different systems to get that data out of as many of these businesses as possible. This involves kind of API design and construction. So the people who are really interested in building like scalable APIs to generalize the logical resources that are used in supply chain, which kind of it's very difficult to think about and do, especially because the data model itself is so complex. And then on top of that, there's, of course, front-end developers building out full stack, building out actually the sort of platforms. And there's, of course, also roles for machine learning engineers and data scientists. What these guys are doing day to day is really thinking about, first of all, like for the data scientist side, the schema of data, how to use it to derive insights from it. And then from the machine learning side, there's both the full stack and the pure engineering roles there. But that really looks like once we've thought about the use cases of which machine learning can be applied to this type of data, building, testing, training, iterating on models, and then actually deploying and productionizing them, hopefully from a full stack perspective, but also from just a model deployment into kind of handing off to full stack.
You are listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
We've been very fortunate on the podcast to have a number of guests who've come on and talked about supply chain and logistics, and all of whom have come from a broad range of backgrounds and decided to work in this space now. You obviously being another one of those. I want to get your take as somebody who has an interesting background prior to going into the area of supply chain. What can you tell our audience who's listening who maybe have not thought about, supply chain and logistics as an area to further their career? What are some of the things that they're not aware of, whether it be based on impact, scale, opportunity, the use of cutting edge technology? Obviously, in your role as CTO, you speak to candidates and you talk to them about, look, why Expedock is a great place to work. But given the scale of the opportunity in this industry as a whole, what can you tell the audience about that would get them potentially interested in Expedock as well as the industry?
Yeah, this is a great question because when I first started looking at supply chain, I think that there were a lot of things that I considered here as to whether this was like a worthwhile space to spend my time. So it's definitely not going to be interesting to everyone. I think you have to have a certain sort of type of interest in problems. It's very different than building a social network. But really, I would say like my why I was interested in supply chain was like, first of all, it's like the ultimate kind of infrastructure play. So if you look at my background, I had worked a lot on infrastructure type companies in different spaces. Stripe, obviously being the payments infrastructure for the internet. Rockset, building out kind of a lot of databases infrastructure for sort of real time ingestion. And, when I looked at supply chain, what I saw was that this was the infrastructure that underlays like 95% of everyone's entire world that no one sees, right? So that was a really compelling opportunity to me. And then the second thing is that I think when you're solving problems in supply chain, you have this very unique opportunity. And it's such a huge market and it underlies so many things that even if you're able to create kind of 1% efficiency in 1% of the market, you've created like $30 billion of value. And that's value for kind of everyone from you and me getting our iPhones or our laptops or whatever to people who really depend on supply chain to live. People in earthquake stricken countries that are using supply chain to get access to fresh water and kind of all these other really important use cases. What I saw going into this space was this ability to have this kind of compounding, almost exponential impact in terms of improving the infrastructure by 1%, allowing you to create kind of billions of dollars of meaningful value in your career to billions and billions of people worldwide. And there weren't too many other industries that I saw where you could have that impact. So if you're really interested in having an exponential with kind of the work that you're doing, as in like improving the base layer, improving everything else on top of it, and you're interested in tackling like really hard, really complex problems in this massive market, supply chain is definitely something that you should consider going into.
Mhm. Yeah, such a great answer. Focusing now on the use of AI in its current form and potential future use cases as the industry develops and the technology develops. You're CTO, so your job is make sure you're executing in the here and now, but also be ready for the constant changes within our field. When you look at the roadmap over the next 2 to 3 years, what are some of the things that you're most excited about for not just the journey and growth at Expedock, but also the use of AI in your business?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think that there's really the sky's the limit with this type of thing because honestly, like most of the businesses in this industry are still adopting cloud. So you're really kind of living in the future when you're tackling problems like this. What I would say the things that are most exciting to me are basically like, the ability to start capturing a large sort of mode of data in the business specifically and the applications to deep learning that has. In terms of the AI use cases that we've tackled, obviously we try a lot of explainable machine learning, gradient boosting, stuff like that, because sometimes the data sets are smaller, sometimes you need explainability. Obviously, there's also been a renaissance in deep learning over the past kind of 5 to 7 years. So as we start capturing more data at scale, I think there'll be some really interesting use cases there around stuff that perhaps we can't even anticipate today. And then the second thing is from a concrete roadmap perspective, I'm really excited about a lot of the supply chain fintech use cases that we're going to be tackling. I think that this is an industry that sometimes is even more outdated than regular supply chain because it's freight forwarding plus banks to historically very, I guess, slower to adopt type organizations. And I think that there's really interesting opportunity all around the sort of financial stack of the supply chain, everything from detecting fraud, which is a huge problem for these businesses right now. We actually just had one client that lost like $5 million to supply chain fraud, to being able to perform better underwriting to this like multi-$100 billion trade finance space, to being able to understand, hey, can we recommend ways for you to basically get better rates, ways for you to drive your costs down using large scale data processing to help move goods more efficiently and cheaply out of your main sort of port areas.
And I've been fortunate enough to speak to some interesting companies working in the broader supply chain field and not specifically to the problem that you're trying to tackle. And there's some incredibly exciting developments coming down the pipe in an industry that is really for disruption, given the multi hundreds of billions of dollars at play. It's almost surprising that people have not been trying to get into it decades ago.
To make, I'm not really sure what goes behind that. I think it's just such a complicated problem that like oftentimes you need a sort of very long time to understand the true issues in this space and then to disrupt them by technology. Because a lot of them are process-based issues or kind of human-based issues that pure technology can't solve sometimes.
I think the impact of COVID has really put the spotlight on how archaic the global supply chain system was, and there's a huge opportunity for people to get in and make a real significant impact and change. And Expedock are clearly looking to lead from the front on that. Final question from me then, Rui. When we meet again in a year or two from now and we talk about the journey from where we are today to where you will be, what are some of the milestones that you're working towards, and what will the business look like in a year or two from now?
So, we just closed our Series A, led by Insight Partners, for about $15 million or so. So really what the company's looking at over the next probably 12, 18, 24 months is scaling from the initial stages of product market fit towards becoming kind of one of the top solution providers in the space. So what that looks like for us from a milestone perspective is, 10xing the number of customers. We have dozens of customers on our platform today, which is still just scratching the surface of these hundreds of thousands of businesses that are worldwide. So there's kind of tons of value to capture. I would say that we really hope to have starting to be flushing out some of the data products more. We have a lot of kind of our revenue mix and our developed products coming from pure automation and capture and kind of multimodal deep learning on documents right now. I think there's tons of kind of untapped value to be had in the actual usage of the data, as I was talking about before. So I'm hoping to make kind of significant progress on that over the next probably 12 to 18 months. And from there, basically, really just starting to solve sort of the scaling challenges of becoming kind of one of the leading solution providers in this space, scaling from dozens to hundreds to thousands of businesses and all the associated really hard technical problems that come with that.
Rui, thank you so much for coming on today and talking to us. It really was great to learn about your own background, the origin story behind Expedock, a great insight into the complexity of the supply chain industry. But with that, what an amazing opportunity to really have a significant impact as being one of the early adopters of trying to introduce AI and automation into an industry that badly needs it, to be quite frank. And we're excited to see what you guys can accomplish. We look forward to having you back on the show in a year or so from now and celebrating your continued success. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.